Okay, I'd like to tie Doug's Crayfish. This is a pattern I got from the late Doug Christensen. Doug was an excellent fly tyer. Used to like to tie a lot of warm water flies. This is his crayfish pattern. He tied it in a number of different colors depending upon the stream that he would fish. It's an easy tie. It's a small crayfish pattern. It's compared to some of the other patterns that are a little bit larger. Tie up a few of these, put them in your box. I think you'll do well on small. Okay, in the vise I have a squirt head jig hook. It's a petite in size, 1/32 ounce, and I've clipped that off to be a little bit shorter. I wanted a little bit more gap for the hook, so I have made it shorter. But I have wrapped 10 wraps of 20 thousandths lead down the shank. This will make the drop off not quite so severe. For thread, I'm going to be using some tan. This happens to be Vivas. You can use anything that's tan. Start the thread behind the lead. Secure the lead in place, then bring the thread down to point on the shank above the barb. For the feelers, I'm going to be using Crystal Flash. This is root beer. Take a strand and fold it over a couple of times. We'll tie it in right above the barb. And we'll bring the thread back to the lead. And we'll cut it off about a shank length, maybe a little longer. Okay, for the feeding appendage, we're going to be using deer hair. We're going to use maybe 12 strands or fibers or so, not too much. Okay, I'm not going to stack it. I'm not really too concerned about it being even, although I want it somewhat even. Pull out some of the shorter fibers until we have a small stack. And we're going to run that about maybe a shank length beyond the bend. I'm not going to wrap it too tight so it doesn't flare too much. After we get it back to the lead, we can clip off the excess. And now we can wrap it down pretty tight. Okay, I'm going to take it out of the vise and turn it over. And for the carapace, we're going to be using some furry foam. The color I'm going to be using is a crayfish color. Kind of V in the foam. And lay it on top of the shank, right behind the tube lead. And we'll wrap it down all the way to the bend. Now I've debarbed the hook, so I'm not too concerned. A little bit, the point comes through. Okay, we'll turn it back over. Okay, for the pinchers, I'm going to be using some crayfish strips. This is crayfish orange. I'm going to take the strip and separate some of the fibers until I have a small tuft of rabbit fur. I'll cut that off the strip. And I have done just a small tuft of hair. I'm going to make that just about the length of the shank. And I'm going to make sure I tie it in on the side, away from me. Okay, we'll take another tuft of this rabbit fur and tie it on the near side. And again, we want to try to make sure that we get it on the side of the shank. Okay, for the legs, I'm going to be using a neck hackle or a saddle hackle. It's in brown. I'm going to tie it with the dull side up. Notice when I tied it in, it took it to the side, so it's now sitting sideways. Okay, for dubbing, you can use just about any kind of dubbing you want. I'm going to be using some rabbit dubbing in cinnamon. Whatever color dubbing you want to use, that's fine. Match it to the crayfish in a stream that you're fishing. And we'll go down about halfway, maybe a third of the way down the hoof shank. Take our hackle pliers, and we're going to bring our hackle down the shank. We want to make sure that the shiny side is facing towards the bend. About 3 wraps of hackle is sufficient. Okay. We can clean it up a little bit, get some of the stragglers out of the way here. And I'm going to build up just a little bit of a ramp, a taper behind this lead. Okay, for ribbing, I'm going to be using some small copper wire. Okay, then we'll go back and add some more of the body. Till we get down close to the tube lid. I'm going to stop right there, put some more dubbing on my thread. Although it's probably not necessary, I'm going to put some head cement on this tube. The idea is to hold the dubbing in place. Okay, we'll turn our fly over again in the vise. Okay, I'm going to bring the carapace over, and I'm going to push it down over the eye. Okay, then I'm going to take my wire and form the tail. Okay, we'll tie it off. Got a pair of scissors here that I used to cut wire with. Cut it off just a little bit, but not the size yet. At this point, then I'm going to take some super glue. Okay, I'll trim the tail to the size I want. And I'm going to take a magic marker or a permanent marker, put a couple little dots for eyes. And maybe a little marking on the back. And the tail. And there we have Doug's crayfish.